Are you ready for the divine feminine revolution? Let's get vulnerable and go deep.
Hello and welcome to the Divine Feminine Revolution podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Megan Monday, and I'm so excited to have a friend and colleague here, Dr. Isha Vela. And where do I even start with you? You're so talented. And not only are you a psychologist, but you are an alchemist. You help people with sovereignty and leadership coaching. I'm just going to go ahead and let you do a brag intro so you can say all the good things and so much that you do.
Thank you. Thank you, Megan, for having me here. Well, I'm a business and love leadership coach, sovereignty coach. I think of myself more as a mentor than a coach, really guiding people through the process of creating or embodying, rather, safety and trust within their own bodies so that they can really come into their entrepreneurship in a way that is in integrity with their energy, with their nervous system. So it's really a lot about nervous system regulation, emotional regulation, and being able to hold space in their love relationships and in their business and even in their relationships with their kids. Like it's all relationships are encompassed in that.
That's beautiful. And let me plug your stuff because I did your membership a while back and it was such a powerful experience of moving emotions through the body and doing that somatic work and just exquisite community and sisterhood. And it was just such a powerful and this was a while ago, so I don't know where the price
Yeah.
point is now, but it was super, super accessible
Yeah.
and just such powerful work. And I was so inspired by it. So just want to plug your is that something you're still doing?
Yeah, I'm definitely still doing it. The community has expanded. Like there's so much more that's in the container now. And it's just like $79.99 a month. And you
Oh,
get for the yearly subscription, you get 2 months free. It's just really like the most accessible way to get this work.
and such powerful work. I mean,
Yeah.
I'm sure you do different things in your one-on-ones or, in your higher level containers, but the amount of transformation just within
Yeah.
that membership was mind blowing.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like
Thank you.
for as someone and you and I kind of have that in common. Our background is psychologists, but then we really have that interest in somatics, body work, energy, and I
Yeah.
love to see. I feel like that is the paradigm shift that needs to happen in psychology is to kind of bridge those things and really allow for the healing piece. Because I feel like the best therapists and psychologists are healers, and that's why
Absolutely.
so many clients tell me over the years, I've seen 5 therapists and nothing worked, and then I came to you. And in my mind, that's because I integrate the healing and the alchemy and the same kind of,
Yeah. It's where the science meets the magic, like science and magic, they're one, right? It's like spirituality and humanity. It's actually one thing.
oh, I love that. Yeah. And I think science is just trying to pin down the magic, like you can always do. Yeah, I love that model there. Um, so you have been on quite a journey yourself. Do you want to give us a little bit? You were on the podcast. You were actually one of my favorite initial interviews.
Oh, thank you.
So it's been, I don't know, I think we're coming up on 2 years for the pod, actually, maybe in November.
Yes, it
Um,
was in August where I interviewed with you. Yeah.
yeah. So tell us, catch us up a little bit on what's been going on in your life and how your programs have been evolving.
Yeah, well, my personal and professional life is like one domain over here, one domain over here, but they do cross over. Um, well, the last time I talked to you was in August of 2020. um, Actually, in December of 2020, I kind of retired as a therapist from the therapeutic model, and I had already been in the process, like during 2020, during the initial months of the pandemic. I was really like I had at the end of 2019, I had separated from my now ex-husband, and I had been in the process of like knowing that I wanted to be polyamorous, but really preparing my body for the experience and really like looking deeply within myself to the parts of me that were like ambivalent about relationships, kind of like, yeah, I don't really want that. And being like, okay, well, what is it that you want? Like, get really clear. Do you want to be in relationships or do you not? And I did a lot of work with healers over the course of that year and initially in 2021. And then April rolled around. I know that there was some full moon happening, and I was just like, all right, I'm ready. Like it finally dropped in the full body yes to being. And when that happened, I was just like, yep. And I know who my first lover is going to be. It's this person I've been talking to over Instagram, and just really like brought the experience in. I was ready for it. And even though I'd been counseling polyamorous couples for a long time as a therapist. And so it was really about not so much about the structures of polyamory that I was interested in, but about the deeper pieces, about like the intimacy pieces and the things we get caught up in, like the stories or the nervous system dysregulation, like just looking at the deeper aspects of it. And I knew that I was prepared on that level. And even still, I was shocked by how activated parts of me got in that initial relationship, even though it was like extremely joyful, so healing, like big shame release, just around like my desire to love many and to have healing experiences around sex, right? It wasn't just about love, but it was also about like spiritual sex and spiritual partnerships.
I love that. What a patriarchy buster to really
Totally. I think that was part of the shame release, was just like, any sort of religious conditioning that had been sort of in my ancestry and patriarchy with blah, 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 blah.
Yeah, it's so powerful. And I love that that's definitely one of my passions as well, is just really exploring sacred sexuality, because
Yes.
I feel like that is the lens that's missing in modern day sexuality, because it can be such a healing practice.
Yes.
Done with trust and, reverence and devotion.
Yes. I
Oh,
love that word, reverence.
yes.
Yeah. And my first partner was so perfect for me because I just, after having been married or having been partnered with my ex-husband for 20 years, it was, it was very new. I felt like it was like kind of like a teenager, kind of like, yeah, I don't know what I'm doing. Like I felt so incredibly awkward. And, I needed a lot of patience and acceptance and just kind of like approval of just like, yep, it's okay. You can take your time and, da, da, da. And I needed that. I really needed that. So that was really healing experience. Just that piece of it, just the patience was very healing for me.
Yeah. So, like, how did you work up the kind of courage to go for it? Like, I love that you said that you waited until you got the full body yes. And
Yeah.
a little bit about, what did you have to kind of unravel as far as the conditioning or your
Yes.
own identities?
That's a great question because I knew that I had made some massive mistakes in my marriage, right? I had been in a codependent relationship. I had codependent tendencies just because of how I had been raised. And then I had this other really hyper independent part. Like, there's like, they seem like polar opposites, and yet they both lived inside of me. And it was really like at that point, the hyper independent piece that I really need to work on, because I was just kind of like, yeah, like I was just saying, like, I don't want relationships. And I could go for the rest of my life and just be by myself and I'd be fine. And just sort of this very like isolated hermit like kind of thing. And I had to like, as part of the so I decided to be intentionally celibate, and of course, COVID helped with that. And during that time, I was communicating with this person that I ended up um, having as my first lover, but I was communicating with him, and I remember like he had reached out to me initially, and my initial response was suspicion. What do you want? And I was like, "Oh, what is that? Like, why am I so suspicious? Like, like what is it? Is it around men in general? Is it just anybody that gets close to me? It's like anybody who expresses interest." And I was digging deeper, and I just was feeling this bigger suspicion of like when somebody feels desire, how does my body react? I react with judgment. Like
Mm.
sexuality, like some aspect of sexuality is bad. Like don't bring that to me. or something is going to get taken from me, was the fear, right?
Mhm.
And so I had to unravel that. And then the other piece was the hyper independence of just like, yeah, I don't really feel like I want to even do this. It's too messy and hard, right? Is what my brain was telling me. But it was just this fear of intimacy, just this really deep level fear. And what the part of the process of clearing that was really getting in touch with my loneliness, because I rarely feel lonely. I'm really happy being by myself, da da da. And that's partly why I'm solo polyamorous, is because I just really don't want a partner in my space all the time. But I had to get in touch with my loneliness to really go in that space and really, like, basically I felt at that time like that the universe had me by the scruff and was like putting my face on the sidewalk and being like, do you want to be in a relationship or not? And I'm like, yes, I do.
Many of them.
It really felt like that. I'm just really like, I surrender. Yes, I do. I do want a relationship. And then that really opened me up. It's like, okay, like, I want it, so I'm gonna get it. Here we are. I'm open to it. Bring it.
Yes, I love that. I felt awareness. We were kind of talking in the green room, we've both had polyamorous clients in the past,
Yeah.
and I love serving the LGBT community. If you listen to the podcast, I identified as bisexual. And, I think it's really easy to be, because I have a male partner, I'm married, I have a kid, like, people just automatically assume like the hetero bubble.
Yeah.
And we're both in the pleasure community. And so I really like resonated with what, like, to, especially with the psychologist piece, like,
Yeah.
to come with my full personhood and all of my identities, and also my sacred sexuality. I really resonate with some of those responses of feeling like, is this okay to, like, put out there? Like,
Yeah.
is it safe for other people to see me in this way? And so,
Yeah.
like, resonate with that. And I think it's really powerful to see, like, the pleasure community coming forward with really, like, embodied sexuality, and also like what you're doing with your workshop and your upcoming programs, like really educating people about, if they're curious, if they're wondering
Yeah.
what it's like how to go for it. 'Cause I know
Yeah.
for my bisexual awakening kind of came like later. I had
Yeah.
had a few experiences, but like, I had this fear when I got really serious with my partner that, like, I would, like, sort of have that, like, midlife lesbian awakening and, like, leave. And that was like a big fear of mine. And so I wish that I had had like a mentor or a guide to really like walk me through what are my options. And, we've had
Yeah.
people on the podcast talk about like ethical polyamory and different things. And I feel like there just wasn't that lens, 10,
Mhm.
15, 20 years ago. And so
Oh,
I
absolutely not.
think is so innovative. So tell us more.
Well, you talked about sacred sexuality, and I missed talking about that part because, as part of my celibacy, a big piece of my celibacy was around stoking my own fire, stoking my own sexual fire, and really enjoying my sexuality for myself, and preparing myself, like filling myself up with me before I shared me with somebody else.
Mm-hmm.
So that was really important, because I think that, sort of from a patriarchal standpoint, like, we are consumed, right? Like, women's energy, and like anybody can be sexualized, right? However you identify, but women especially are like taken from, just, like, when you think about rape culture, when you think about advertising and media and things like that, we're always being sort of taken, and there's gaze upon us and all those things. And I was like, no, I want my gaze to be absolutely mine. I began a selfie practice where I would take pictures of myself with clothing and without clothing, but really about, like, I want to see myself. I want to enjoy myself. I'm going to take over the lens. And that was a huge part of what enabled me then to, like, to share my sexuality, because I felt like, really, like, I was like bathing in it on a daily basis, and I feel like I fell in love with myself in the process of like shifting the gaze, and becoming the eye of the beholder. So that was really big for me. in terms of my own journey around like sexuality, I came out as I remember like being 12 years old and knowing that I was queer, but not really understand. I mean, I grew up in Puerto Rico, so it's like you're a man or you're a woman, and so or you're gay, and it looks a very particular way, right? And so I knew I was queer, but I didn't really understand how. And I came out as bisexual in high school because it's sort of like the options, right? Like, and it was interesting because I lived in San Francisco for a few years in my 20s, for 2 years in my 20s. And I was in the, in the queer trans community there. And I was, in the process of kind of like possibly entering a polyamorous kind of like cule of some sort, a polycule. And then I met my now ex-husband. And it's really funny because it's like I was on this path already, and then when like, and I just made a choice to go down this one. And, while I was married with my now ex-husband, I was committed. We never talked about open relationship until things were sort of falling apart, but that was only as a way to sort of like rescue the relationship because I just couldn't be married. And it really was less about him, and more about the structures of marriage that I just could not, it just felt too confining for the way that I wanted to love. And so that's, I was absolutely loyal, and like I didn't have eyes for anybody else. And when I exited that relationship, I knew that that's what I wanted to explore, because I had been exploring it with my clients, and I was just like, yeah, I want that.
It's a good little preview, right?
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. I'm just kind of like,
we're going. Yeah.
my clients are always like that, right? They just like bring your stuff to you,
Yeah. And I've kind of noticed it does seem, just like in my anecdotal experience working with clients, like I've found that the people that have had the most success with it, a lot of times both partners are sexual. Like there is sort of that piece. I don't think that has to be true, but I've just kind of noticed that where like there was maybe a piece where just by nature of being attracted to like both genders or all people or however you identify, that worked a little better than say like a heterosexual more like threesome or something like that, so.
Yeah. And I think that's partly because there's already like, when you open that, you widen the option,
Yeah.
right? There just has to be more flexibility internally for desire and for needs and wants and all of that kind of stuff. And so I feel like it translates into nervous system capacity a little bit more.
Yeah,
It
and
just
it's
that openness to
the empathy,
experience.
the direct experience, and just like I think, if like say one partner is bisexual, and other partner is heterosexual, like I think there's
Yeah.
a fear on the heterosexual part because they just don't understand like what's happening and how
Yeah.
the dynamic necessarily. So
Yeah. Yeah.
to be
And my focus is on intimacy wounds. So even like what you just shared now is like so much of our behavior in relationships is driven by our fear of loss. So much. And if we really like, that's why creating safety and trust in your own body is so important, because it's like you have to know at some level that even though your partner or your lover will leave you, you'll still be okay. And oftentimes we don't know that in our body. We have that understanding like, oh yeah, like I'll be devastated, but I'll be okay. But we have to also know that in our bodies. And often like, yeah, like I don't want to lose my partners, but it's like, I know that I can let them go. I know that I can let them go. And I know that we can shift our relationship out of a sexual one into one that is still like mutually honoring, reciprocal, respectful, all those things, and maintain, and shift into something else and be like, okay, what else can happen here, right?
yeah. So like coming out of a marriage and like starting to date, was it like starting all over again? Like, did you feel like a teenager? Like, how was
I still feel like a teenager, Megan. I am actually in my mid-20s right now. Yeah, it was
You're
some deep.
reversing.
Yeah, like, you know, my sex drive was really high. Like, not in my marriage. I feel like I did a lot of like the internal work, and also like balancing my chemistry because I was sick for a long time, getting all that fixed up, so to speak. I had a really high sex drive and I like enjoyed it. I really enjoyed it. And you know, my summer last summer when I really began my journey concretely and practically, my practicum in polyamory, um, I called it my summer of slut because I was just like, I am going to really explore it all. And it was like, I approached it like psychological field work. Like, I'm going all in. And of course, with the utmost respect for the people that I was interacting with. And even like, even the people like I never got to meet in person, it was just really like respectful and like, this is what I want. This is what I'm doing. I was very clear about my intentions. And so, you know, some really beautiful relationships came out of that. And I'm still in contact with people that were close to me. And so I'm really grateful for that, you know.
You know, I feel like there's a parallel. I feel like we're moving out of kind of a linear timeline and
Yeah.
into more of a fluid, you know, like less definitions and identities and that kind of thing. And so I think it kind of makes sense that like I feel like the whole world just kind of opened up for you when you went for it. And so I think it makes sense that more and more people are going to be wanting that because we're like shedding this false skin of the patriarchy and colonialism and just all of the shame and conditioning and stuff that tells us
Yeah.
a certain way. Um,
Right.
and for me, I always feel like it's like, I just love humanity so much, and so, like, why wouldn't I, you know, be attracted to, like, you know, all people?
Yes, exactly. Like and that's what I would tell people. Like, I love humanity. And when I make love to a body, I'm making love to the human, right?
Mhm,
Like, I'm making love to this body that contains this human spirit. Like, for me, that's the way that I approach sexuality, you know? And you said something earlier about like the timeline piece. There's, you know, we're really starting to question, you know, monogamy in and of itself is not a bad option for people, right? It's not wrong. And yet there are aspects to it that can be toxic, right? That can be very limiting and that really like confine love, that really promote sort of this colonized idea of love. And I think that part of the timeline piece is really expanding how we love,
mhm.
who we love, right? All of that is opening way up, you know? Yeah, yeah. And even like, I mean, you know, my path, you know, it's in my astrology and everything, is like my path is about getting to know who I am via relationships.
Mhm.
You know, and that really has been like each person that I have had the privilege of sharing my energy with, right? Sexual or otherwise, has been just this like, oh, I didn't know that about me. And here is this new part of myself I get to uncover and explore and play with. And, you know, recently I began dating a transgender woman. And that was new for me. And I really discovered in that process of like falling for her that I've always been attracted to transgender women, but because of my socialization, I wasn't allowed that because it's like, you know, all of the ideas that we have about like the oh, about, you know, transgender women are men in skirts and are interlopers into women's spaces, like all of that toxicity, like I had to release that as part of my process of loving her. And so that was like, and then I was like, you know, I always thought of myself as pansexual, and it was sort of a confirmation of just like, yeah, like I just love a soul, a person. Like it doesn't really matter the package they come in, you know? Um, so yeah, that was also like a new discovery for me that I think is part of the process of loving more than one is like we get to discover parts of ourselves. And I think that that's from a soul's perspective. That's what we want. Like we want to know ourselves. And we get to do it through relationship. We get to do it through lots of different things, but relationship is one of the vehicles.
Absolutely. I've had a lot of trans clients, and trans teen clients, and I just feel like I've learned so much from, working with those people because, uh, like, talk about transformation, right? If we want to learn about transformation,
Yes. Hello.
transformation. And especially like in the young people coming forward, I really do see like, I don't know exactly what the numbers are, but it seems like there's a shift in like the people maybe under 20 that's becoming more and more an option. And I do just feel like that may be, certain souls are coming in to like sort of heal the gender disparities and all the
Yes.
they're toxic about gender roles. And
Mhm.
so I really, and I've done a lot of work, like, helping people come out to their parents and like explaining it to the parents and helping the parents through their grief process and, you know, like sort of signing off on surgeries and hormones and things like that. And so I feel like to me, that's been some of the most rewarding advocacy work that I've done as a psychologist. And I think that there's like, to me, it's really exciting that like instead of black and white, we're transitioning, like as a culture into the
Yeah.
space. We don't have to be this extreme or that.
Exactly, exactly. Yeah, like I joke often about like, smashing binaries. Like
Mhm.
all our work internally and externally isn't smashing binaries, right? Like black, white, male, female, like all of the binaries you can think of, even like, even politically, the way that we hold binaries and so like, I am pro this and anti that, right? Like to be more in the complexity and the grayscale of our human experience.
Mhm. And we know, like, from the psychology perspective that, like, black and white thinking, sort of is related to depression and
Yeah, yeah.
dialectic. And that's been such a focus of my therapy work. But it's really exciting to see that, like, kind of come forward, like globally in our culture of really just recognizing that there's so many limitations to putting people in boxes and to having
Yeah.
this narrow sliver of what's available to us, then, to me, it seems like you have so much more like freedom and the ability to be fully expressed by.
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah, and like loving in this way has its bumps, right? Like I don't have the security of an anchor partner or a primary partnership, right? Like I do get hit with moments where I realize like I am actually fucking alone. Right? Like I'm connected to these people and people who love me, and yet I really do fend for myself, And so there are there's ways that polyamory can be really beautiful, and there's ways where, you know, I notice that we have more opportunity there's more opportunities to heal, and those healing experiences often come through activations
Mhm.
of feeling the part of myself that wants to like I want them to belong to me, or I want to belong to them, or I don't feel included, or I feel left out, or I feel left or abandoned, right? All of those pieces do come in, and just was it yesterday? Yesterday morning, I was driving home after dropping my kids off at school, and I just had this like stream of tears come down my face because it just got flooded for a moment with all of the people who have come in and out of my life and being like so grateful for the love that I received and gave, but also like they're not with me anymore. Like I don't like love them like that, and it's changed, and I have to like let go of what was. So it's a constant like process of meeting like grief, like saying hello and goodbye. And sometimes I feel like, when I think about the people who have come into my life, I feel like I've come into people's lives when there has been a lot of chaos or transition or crisis, and I'm there for them, and then the relationship moves on. And I'm just like, what the part of me is like, what the fuck? Like the human part of me is like, no. And the spiritual part of me is just like, yeah, like I supported you through this process. We were lovers, we were connected. I offered my like my deepest presence to you in that time, and then you were able to like move on and up level to something else, and so I can see it from both lenses, and different parts of me have different opinions about how that feels, and but ultimately, like, I think that we need to, like, one thing that I really teach people is, like, you need to get clear about why you're doing this.
Mhm.
Why are you in this? Why are you choosing this path? Is it because, you want a lot of attention, or do you feel, which is okay. Do you feel like you want to have sexual variability? Do you feel you want to heal through kink? Like, everybody has a different reason, and that reason is totally okay, and it also guides how you approach your relationships.
Mhm. You mentioned your kids. Like, have you come out to them? Like, what has that been like?
Yeah, yeah. For a long time, I kept it very separate. I kept my work life. My, I feel like polyamory is my work. Um, my my personal life away from them, because as a solo person, it's like, no, you're not going to be staying over the night when my kids are here. Like, very clear boundaries about that. And then when I met this this woman I was talking about, that shifted my sort of my paradigm around my own gender fluidity and attraction to transness. Um, it was just very clear that she was somebody that I wanted my children to meet, and so she did, and that felt like a good moment, to ask them, like, hey. And I saw that their father was also on a dating profile, and I was like, okay, so this is the time to have this conversation. Like, how do you feel about mom and dad possibly, like, meeting other people? And they're like, oh yeah, as long as they're like this person and this person, like really cool people that we have in our greater group of friends, then it's cool. And I was like, well, what about my friend? And they were like, yeah, that's cool, yeah, we like her. And that was totally natural, because my kids go to school with there's like 3 or 4 kids between my two daughters' classes who are transitioning, right? Who
Amazing.
are trans. And so that was very normal for them. And then recently we went to a pride parade last Saturday, actually. And my daughter's asking me about all the little flags. What about this flag? And I was like, oh, that's poly. Yeah, like, that's me. And then it's like, what about this? Oh, that's the pansexual. That's also me. What about this? Oh, that's gender fluid. That's also me. And she's looking at me like, all right, mom.
Oh my gosh, I love it.
Yeah, yeah.
I've taken my daughter to Pride since she was a baby, and I feel like it's such a powerful community. And
Yes.
there's so much, like, I mean, it's like a visceral sense of belonging, and
Yes.
just like, I wrote a post about it, which only got a couple comments. I was a little disappointed, to be honest, about just working in this community. And I was like, wow, like, I feel like I have so many, pro LGBT people in my life, and like no one, supported that post in particular. But, I think it's still one of those things that's like a little edgy, but like, I really encourage people to like investigate it and go to the Pride, even if they're an ally, because it is such a powerfully healing experience.
Absolutely. And my kids, I think it was very powerful for my kids, because, it is sort of like an immersive experience.
Yeah.
It's like we do live in a sort of heteronormative world, and to be then immersed in a queer one, it's just like, oh, just by contrast, but just by the experience of contrast. And, my older daughter, who's 10, she got to see really young people who were queer, and she's not, into anyone right now. She's just kind of in her books and in her, like, literary world. But it was just nice for her to see. And I could see in her eyes, like, oh, like, I get to have all of these options. Like, there's so many ways to be in relationship. And that's all that I want them to have, is just like options. You have options. Don't limit your lens, right? Like, you have options. You can love who and how you want.
Love that. I had kind of been circling back to something you said earlier. I sort of had the same experience in grad school. I ended up dating this fellow that was a little bit unstable, so maybe a narcissist or borderline or something. And I sort of had that moment of like swearing off men, and then and then I met my husband like directly after, and so he's very open minded and has both a strong feminine and masculine. And but it was one of those moments of like the universe just being like, what? Really? Like I finally decided to go for it. And then you bring me this like great guy. Like, um, so I think it's one of those things that I work with a lot, as you do, like really powerful women. And I find that a lot of times, not all, because there's amazing like divine masculine men out there. I have one, like they are out there, but I do find a lot of men are intimidated by powerful women, and that like almost like the more powerful the woman is, like the harder sometimes they find like trying to find a mate, that is a man. And so like a lot of times
Mm,
they're possessive or they're jealous or they're territorial of,
mm,
the woman's power and her sexuality and things like that. And so I feel like you know, obviously like gender roles have created so much trauma, rape culture and hyper masculinity and hyper femininity and these cycles of like abuse and all kinds of things. And so
mhm.
I think that's why this is why we're like on the Divine Feminine Revolution podcast.
Yes.
Not to exclude the masculine, but in my mind, it's like the matriarchy is rising. And I feel like it's such a powerful counterpoint to the patriarchy, because where the patriarchy has been exclusive and has been domination culture and power over people, I really feel like the matriarchy is inclusivity and freedom of expression. And like you said, like choices and options, and like you can just do what you want versus you have to be in the small sliver of, you have to be in your box and you have to be,
Yeah.
under the power and control system. So
Yeah.
pretty
Yeah.
curious, a little bit of a rant, but what's your take on that?
Yeah. My take is that, because I am attracted to queerness and fluidity, I feel like I've had a lot of luck, or maybe just I've just attracted, people in my life who are very aware of how, if I date a cis man, they're very aware of how the feminine lives in them, and they're people who maybe paint their fingernails or, have some sort of expression outward, as well as sort of this inward holding of the feminine. And so I feel like I've been really lucky. I think that's sort of with the rise of feminine energy, or with this like this realization that this is what has been suppressed for such a long time. It just gives everybody, regardless of, your gender identification, it just gives everybody opportunity to just locate that within themselves. So I really feel like that's where we're going with the goal, if there is a goal, to balance that out within each person.
For sure.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think it's that healing energy of the receptive, the mystery, I think does.
Yes.
To gender it, I feel like it does the more feminine piece, and that's what's been missing, and that's why so many people are suffering.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, we talk about masculine and feminine because it's like, how do we don't have the language.
Yeah.
I tend to use receptive
I like
and active just because like I don't like using feminine and masculine because I don't feel that within me. But language is limited. And so just as a shortcut, like, let's talk about it, but they can't live apart. They need each other, you
yeah,
know?
they're both inside of us. We all,
Yes.
masculine and feminine, or receptive or active.
Yeah.
Yeah. So tell me a little bit about your workshop that's coming up. Like, if listeners out there are listening to our stories and they're kind of curious,
Yeah.
or, a lot of people are scared to kind of go for it because maybe they have a good thing going already, or they
Yeah.
get lost in like the people pleasing of multiple relationships. Like, give us a little like intro
Yeah.
primer on what you're kind of teaching that.
Yeah, well, it is a primer, right? Like the event I'm having on Tuesday, June 14th at 1 p.m. to 3 p.m. It's a 2-hour donation-based course called the Polyamory Primer. And it's really, the intention is to really get clear on the stuff that gets you stuck in polyamory, which is usually like our fears around intimacy, right? The fear of annihilation or the fear of engulfment, right? These sort of universal fears that are actually in our nervous systems that lead to um, arguments or conflicts or flare-ups or activations. And so just really giving people a rundown of like, these are I say, these are the 4 areas to assess, right? Like around values, your motivation, desires, all of that stuff. 4 areas to assess. You're going to get the 5 intimacy wounds, like the 5 things that get in the way. And I'm going to give you 1 somatic tool to be able to meet yourself when you get activated, to meet yourself in a way that actually helps dissolve the activation, right? That helps like actually heal, with you being the healer and the person being healed. So that's what I'm offering. It's like there's a lot of information that I'm going to share, but I really want to keep it to the 4-5-1 thing, because I want people to have like just enough to be able to have a conversation with their partner if they are partnered and wanting to open up their relationship, or if they're solo and really like, okay, now I feel clear about how I want to approach. I know sort of what to look out for within myself and to sort of be self-referenced, and it's like, as I was telling you in the green room, like recently I got into a situation where it's like, yes, I do this work, and man, do I get caught up in it myself, like in this effort to like, you know, I still have my shit around wanting to be liked and wanting to be liked in a particular way. And I lost sight of in this development in this relationship that I was developing and growing. I got caught up in that a little bit, and I was out of integrity with my own energy. I noticed that I was overextending myself. And all of a sudden, when I noticed, it was like, like when that awareness came in, I was like, and stop. And I immediately had the conversation with this person, and we worked it out, and we decided to end our sexual partnership, because it's like, that's where I was kind of getting caught up, and I wanted to be liked sexually in a particular way. And I noticed that my nervous system got hooked in there. And we were able to like have the conversation, feelings were hurt. I'm still grieving that loss. And it was a decision, because like I was out of integrity. And so we get caught up in these ways, and I don't want people to make themselves wrong. These are all opportunities for course correction, for growth, right? Like a lot of people approach polyamory because they want to grow. And those are the people that I want to work with. If you're in it for the growth, if you're in it for the expansion, if you're in it for decolonizing your ideas around love and partnership, then yes, like come into the workshop. It's going to be amazing.
Love it. I also want to plug, you have some hysterical reels. I love following you. And like you did one about, I think like people pleasing or something, and wanting like, coveting that like compliments.
Yes, yes.
It's so hard. And I just love like, I really think you have such a unique voice, and you're really doing things like different than just your like, like the pointing reels.
Yeah, yeah. I have one coming up. I did do I think it's like my 2nd or 3rd pointing reel.
Well, it's okay. I mean, I'm not hating on the pointing reels, but I'm just saying, like, you have a really powerful voice that comes through, and you're so funny. So I just love when those 2 things like marry together. It's so awesome. So definitely check out Isha Vela on IG, and check out the reels and everything. So powerful. So yeah, like I just really appreciate like, sharing your experience, and making it so visible, because I think it really does highlight for people that there's more choices and more identities, more relationship types available to them. And so that's really
Yeah.
powerful.
Thank you so much.
We got this workshop is kind of the promo for a different program. Like tell us more about
Yeah.
that.
Yeah. So I'm the primer's on the 14th, and I'm gonna be, after that, launching a 5-week course where I really guide folks through the experience of like, okay, these are the embodied tools. This is a practice space. We're going to dive into the things that I'm teaching in the primer. We're going to dive into those in more details. We're going to explore the intimacy wounds, right? We're going to really like let them land in the body, and really have people be able to uncover for themselves where that lives inside of them. So they can be like, oh yeah, I also have that part of me that wants to be liked. And then have the practice be like, how can I meet that place? And how can I, if it gets activated in a relationship, how can I bring that to my partner in a way that is about radical self-ownership? Like, I really want to emphasize that piece, because a lot of times we outsource our shit onto other people. Like, I have this hurt part, I want you to take care of that. And yes, we get to share that. We get to have somebody witness that part, but we are the owners of that part. We are the responsible, parents of that hurt child, let's say, to use a more psychological language. But we do bring that, we do bring that into our partnerships, and we can do it even from a place of like humor. It's like, oh yeah, I have the part of me that like wants a lot of attention right now, that's coming up or something. And that gets to all be part of the spectrum. So that's going to be a 5-week course. And so it's really like, it ends up being like 2 hours a week, 1 hour of teaching. And that's the second hour, which is not recorded, is going to be coaching.
I love that.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's really exciting, because people actually get to have the embodied practice in real time.
So cool. I've heard many people voice this, but a lot of people sort of have the stereotype of polyamorous relationships that they're having a lot of sex, but really that could be there too. But
I can
a
attest
lot
to
of
that.
communities
That's not true, Megan.
but really it's a lot of communication, and I think
Yeah.
that that's the piece that I really admire about people who go for polyamorous relationships, is they have to be like exquisite communicators, and they
Yes.
have to like be able to talk about the tough stuff and negotiate it amongst multiple
Yes.
relationships. And so just curious if you had any like kind of final thoughts on that piece, because I think it's our tendency to sort of like sexualize things. And so I think whether
Yes.
you're bisexual or whether you're poly, like that does sort of carry, a hypersexual piece to it, but it's so much more than that. And I
Yeah.
really have found witnessing my clients who've been poly, like, wow, they've got better communication skills than like most people I know. So
Yeah, so I'll share a humorous part, and I'll share the more serious part. So the humorous part is that, like, I can attest to the fact that no, polyamorous people may not be having more sex. They're doing a lot more talking. I remember being so frustrated last year. It's like, how can I be connected to so many people and just not have them in my bed right now? Like, what is the problem? But on the more serious note, like, a lot of people who come to me, are saying like, we have a communication problem. And when I hear that, I want to look a little deeper, because what I hear as a communication problem is like, how is fear coming into your communication, is the question that I always want to ask, because that's what gets us activated. That's what like creates conflict. And when we're able to, we don't often feel our fear. It's just something that that just kind of explodes in our nervous system. And then our ego attaches a story. And then it's like, you don't appreciate me. And instead of saying like, I'm afraid that I'm not going to get back what I give to you, right? Or I don't trust that my giving will be reciprocated or appreciated. It's like, can we name the fear? If we can be more in touch with our fear, that will improve the communication so much more, to just name what's happening in the moment. And I teach like embodied communication. So it's like, if you can identify the fear, you can just say, I'm feeling some tightness in my chest right now as you're telling me this news. And then it just brings it down to a level that, again, doesn't have labels, but just names what's happening in the moment. And you can just be with the person present in the moment. And that is a whole nother level of relating and communicating that I really want to promote more. Yeah.
Oh, so good. And, you talk about being like a leadership mentor, and I think you really embody that. And, you're using like your own life, and, you're a psychologist, and, but then really doing this like innovative cutting edge stuff. And I just feel like it's such a powerful gift to the world to be visible and showing, the many choices that are available to us all. So I so appreciate you and love witnessing your journey. And so really appreciate that. So tell people where to find you and
Okay. Yeah.
now.
Yeah, you can find me. I have two websites, one for sort of the business leadership and the other one for the love leadership. So my business leadership website is www.revolutionaryrompereglas.com. And my other website is ishavela.com. You can find me on IG at revolutionary.rompereglas. And yeah, that's pretty much it. That's where I hang out. I use Facebook, but it's my concentration is really on IG. And I have a podcast called Devotional Anarchy. And that's sort of where I share some of the deeper embodiment work and the how to live the principles of love and business leadership.
Well, I know what podcast I'm going to binge watch next. And just to keep anybody listening who's interested, it's ROMPEEREGLAS.
Yes. Yeah.
We'll have that in the show notes and everything.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Megan. I'm really just so appreciative of the way we've been connected over the last couple of years and how we keep sort of crossing over into each other's worlds and fields. Yeah, it's really great.
Well, I know. I think that has been so powerful to me in kind of becoming more visible and joining the coaching community, and especially the pleasure community of just finding so many I almost feel like sometimes it's like I find someone and I'm like, is that like a parallel version of me? Like they're living this other life. I feel like there's someone who is commenting on the Johnny Depp Amber Heard thing and was talking a lot about borderline, and that's been kind of a specialty of mine. And I was like, oh, the person who's like I could be doing that stuff. It's not my heart is telling me to go, but it has been like a big focus. And so it is just so powerful to see these incredible women leaders, rising up and talking about the really hard stuff.
Yes.
Love that. Especially like post-COVID world, I feel like for me, I've been such an overachiever and have such like a definite, this is what I want. And I've been doing so much healing work. And I feel like I'm so much more, instead of being so future oriented and ambition oriented, I just feel like it's very neutral and kind of more in the moment. And it feels a lot better.
Yeah, I feel like collectively, feel that's the vibe right now. People are just let me live well right now. And people are much less planning for the future, even though that's kind of that's kind of what we do, but really about let's just enjoy this summer or let's just enjoy this month, having a much more narrow focus or timeline. Yeah. Yeah.
I just signed up for a course about becoming a sexpert and getting a media page together and stuff. And I'm like, oh, is that my next
oh, nice. Good one.
I may go full pleasure. It's been a journey, but yeah, I feel like, I'm sure you would say the same thing, feel like such a different person than when we met a few years ago. And
yes.
And, I think it's so powerful when people are vulnerable enough to let people witness them in the journey as it's happening. They can be a vulnerable piece,
I think that's part of our job is to really humanize and normalize the journey. Yeah, absolutely.
All right. Well, everybody go check out Isha's, go check her out on IG, sign up for the workshop. I just want to check that out. So we'll see y'all next time. Bye.
Thanks for listening to the Divine Feminine Revolution podcast. Make sure to subscribe and leave a 5-star review. Want to keep the conversation flowing? Find us on Facebook at the Divine Feminine Revolution Facebook group, where revolutionary women gather to listen to their hearts, monetize their gifts, and change the world.